Rock and roll. All right. Good morning, everybody. Ooh, did you hear that? A little heartache there. That's what Jimi Hendrix used to call it. I always thought that was cool. My name is Mbuell. This is your presentation on how we can get the younger generations involved in woodworking. Ooh, that's a complex problem. But a little bit about me, just so that you know I have at least some experience that might add value to the perspective I'm going to offer today. I am a professional furniture designer and furniture builder, specializing in higher end furniture, although lower end is fine if it is profitable, which it rarely is. I've been doing it about 16 years. I started out with nothing. I was in a job that was stressful, and I don't know if I'd say it was fulfilling, and I found woodworking. I didn't know how to build a box, I didn't know how to work a drill, and to show my age, this was back when the only options in front of me to learn were magazines and textbooks at the library. Yeah, I'm that old now. I didn't have YouTube woodworkers to show me the way. Wink, wink, might have been a good thing, I'm not quite sure these days. The reason I say that is I'm very aware of what it is like to try and get into a profession without a lot of help. There were no vocational programs for woodwork anywhere near where I live. There were maybe two woodworkers close by that I would drive crazy with questions, and they were nice enough to take time when they had it from trying to make their own living. Looking back on it, I can see why they didn't want to really teach me how to be their competition. But that's about all I had. It was just grit, refusal to quit. I'm persistent. If you don't believe me, ask my wife. So I just wanted to throw that in there for context that I do have some experience in what it is like in a situation where it's not set up the way it used to be traditionally, where these kind of trade programs in manufacturing, woodworking were a little more available. Another relevant part of my history as a professional is I have had multiple apprentices, all 3 or 4 of them between the ages of 19 and 23. One of them even worked with me for about 3 years. So I have spent, just like they say, you know, the Japanese in their woodworking, which they are the best, 10,000 hours to master a craft, right? I have logged 10,000 hours listening to young people in a wood shop talk. You know, and that matters. Just because I know some things doesn't mean I know everything. And I don't know what it's like to be 20 years old in the United States. I'm 44. But I've had an opportunity to get to know some young guys and work with them at length on some very large jobs, but also get to know them as people and what their lives look like and kind of what motivates them, gets them up in the morning. Some of them are just funny. One of them ended up being one of my best friends. So the real deal, why I'm here. I don't get paid for this. My work and my clients pay my bills, not my Instagram, and not speaking to you. So I'm just being honest. I don't really want anything other than a chance to just give back to something that's given a lot to me. So what I offer you is free. I care about the legacy of this craft. I have spent a lot of time studying what I consider the Mount Rushmore of the masters, which would be, in a quick one, you might recognize the names of Sam Malouf, George Nakashima, Wendell Castle. These are legends, they are giants. They're people I get up and aspire to be like every day. They are what got me into this. They showed me there was a possibility that I could go do something like this and actually make a living and feed my family. So just a little bit about my intentions. I just care. Because whether they get involved with the trades or not, it really isn't going to do much for me other than I might have a few other choices of hiring when I need help. But ultimately, I don't have a lot of skin in this game. I'm not a major company who is freaking out because their largest buying percentage of buyers is aging out. And they're worried who the next market of buyers is going to be because half of them don't even know they exist. I got no skin in that game. But I care. I want the legacy of woodworking to be able to continue. So the names like Wendell Castle, Sam Malouf, and George Nakashima are still known. So, I like to look at history. I'm a big fan of the opportunity that hindsight gives us, because we're sitting here talking about why can't we get, or how do we get, the younger generations in the woodworking industry. Well, that tells me we have a problem because they're not. Why? What happened? So I kind of just did a little digging. I like history. It's factual and it's helpful. And usually, the best thing I can do is look at where did the path veer, so that I can look at maybe how we can adjust and get it back on. That's how I deal with my personal life stuff. And 90% of the time, it's quite useful. So I was doing a little digging, and this is a generational issue. We are now an entire generation removed from having major manufacturing in this country on the large scale in which we had for decades. So in the mid-90s, there were trade deals that were signed, and no, I'm not going into politics, it's an outside issue, this is about woodworking. But the facts are that trade deals were signed that outsourced jobs in '94 to Mexico. And within a short span, about 6 years after that, more deals were signed that outsourced manufacturing jobs to the Pacific. By 2002, I do believe China dominated the furniture market, which constitutes a lot of woodworking in this country. I mean, what, 80%, I think, loosely I recall reading, of all the furniture being purchased was not manufactured here by mid-2000s. So what happened was, the data tells us, the jobs became unavailable. That's obvious. I think we all know that. We've all heard about trade and all this policy stuff, but I live in Northwest Arkansas. I live right in the middle of the United States. And I went to college in Indiana, right smack in the Rust Belt, right in that area. So I have a lot of life experience living in Middle America. And I've driven through Middle America a lot. I've seen a lot of old factories that aren't doing anything anymore. I see a lot of old main streets with nothing open. And so I look at what started this and what we need to start looking at. When these things happened, we see data, job loss, profit loss, yada, yada, yada. And companies moved for profit. Look, I run a business, I ain't knocking them. It's just what it is. I like profit too. But there's a story behind the data. And we're seeing it through the generational problem we've got. So if you're a kid, and you're old enough and smart enough to see that the meals at the family table are getting a little light, mom and dad are really, really stressed, and you're in the mid-90s, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of kids. It's not just about a profession dying, it's that it's now getting associated with failure. It's cultural. It's a stigma. And what happened? Those kids are now the parents of the kids we're trying to get into the industry. Well, those kids were told to go to college, go get the safety of a corporate job, go work in retail, something that is not with your hands, because that is now what we associate with being a lower end job, or at least it was for quite some time. So now we're seeing a carryover. And I see it all the time. And it's not me trying to get some social movement going. What I'm trying to do is I'm looking at the history to try and understand a perspective. Because it's not just as simple as, let's make a cute woodworking video on YouTube, and they'll be all in it. That hasn't worked. I'm not knocking, look, there's good stuff out there too, but we have to look at this a little differently. So, there's good news. I know, I am a doom and gloom kind of guy, but there is good news. Woodworking is vast, and the term woodworking industry, it's really just kind of a blanket or umbrella statement that covers a lot of different career paths. I've been doing a thing called the Woodworking Roundtable every day here for an hour, and the diversity of types of woodworking backgrounds the attendees have had has been awesome. Millwork, cabinetry, programming and running the software for CNCs that are doing the work, which I couldn't do that, so that counts. Furniture building, hobbyists. It's been really ranged. Working in theater, building stage props for large theater companies in New York. These all fall in the umbrella. There's a lot of different places and ways in which we can offer something. We just got to get them to the table. But the biggest problem is they don't even know the table exists. We need, in the marketing terms, we need a bigger funnel. The other thing that we have going for us that we might not realize yet is that we're probably going to have a lot of that done for us in the next 3 or 4 years. Because AI is going to start replacing a lot of those safe office jobs. But it's not replacing plumbers. It's not replacing a trim carpenter anytime soon. I've read articles. AI is moving fast. It's mind-blowing. But it's not moving fast enough to do dovetails. You know, so, well, maybe CNC it, but there are some things that we are going to be needed for. So I think we're going to see more interest based on just availability. My biggest concern right now is we lack perspective, and we also need to do more to prepare for what's coming. I'm trying to stay in my notes, because that's when if I don't, it's when I get myself in trouble. And I will take questions when I finish up, I promise. I like interaction. So, what does it look like? Like, how are we going to connect with these young people? I learned this years ago. I'm a father as well, and the trickiest, most fearful part when I found out I was going to be a dad was that it was a little girl, because I don't know how to play with little girls. It really brought a lot of fear up in me, which actually looked like anger. I got over it in about an hour. And I really had to learn a valuable lesson that a lot of times, in order to communicate with her, I've really got to meet her where she's at. You know, she's not on the level that I'm thinking on or talking on. So that works for me and my now 12-year-old daughter, which feels like that level is really getting weird. It also pertains to 44-year-old me talking to a 19-year-old or a 22-year-old who's getting involved in the trades. I've got to meet him where he's at. He doesn't have my experience, but he has his own experiences. I need to listen. And I have a habit too. I've been doing my job for a long time. My resume is plenty impressive. I know a few things, and some days I can get a little big on my high horse, or I don't want to listen because I have all the answers, right? It's usually when I get in trouble. I'm not open. And the luck I've had working with younger guys and gals is by trying to just meet them on a level they're at. Matter of fact, my first apprentice, I poached him from a sneaker store in the mall. He was managing it. He was already 19, he was a manager. He was making pretty good money. He just wasn't fulfilling. He wanted to try something else. I asked him when he got paid. I said, I'd pay him a little more on top of that. Come on. 3 years later, he went out and started his own business. But I met him where he was at, and when I say that, it's because I was lucky enough to have some friends who were a little more tapped into the age group, and I was able to find out what kind of common interests they have. And at that point, about 10 years ago, the sneaker culture was a big deal. So I knew that was a good place to go meet people, but also a way to connect. Because heck, I still like Air Jordans. I can talk to a guy about that, you know, right? And then we talk about building a cool closet system where he can store them all and display them all. Next thing you know, what he's really doing is talking about woodworking or cabinetry. And that was the bridge. Next thing you know, he's in there learning how to run a joiner, which he took that like a champ, by the way. It's pretty scary stuff if you've never done it. So I'm a big fan of trying to find a way to meet people where they're at, and then listening, and then finding ways to communicate in a way that they actually understand. An example, and this is really showing my age, how many of y'all have ever seen the movie Big with Tom Hanks? All right, that's more than half. That's better than I thought it'd be. So there's a scene in the movie where, well, the premise of the movie is he's like a 12, 13-year-old boy, and he wishes to be an adult, and overnight he wakes up in an adult's body, but he's still mentally a 12-year-old boy. But he has to go out and get a job and be an adult and all those things. So at a certain point in the movie, he's an adult, and he's at a dinner party with a bunch of adults. And a little kid comes in who lives in the house at the dinner party, the host, his parents, and he's struggling with his algebra. And the dad's like, hey, we're in a dinner party, he blows him off. But Tom Hanks, being an actual 12-year-old or 13-year-old boy, understood that struggle. And he gets up and he goes in the kid's room, and the kid's struggling with just basic algebra. I still do. And he looks around the kid's room and sees he's a die-hard Boston Celtics fan. And he looks at the kid and he goes, well, this isn't that bad. Did you watch the game last night? The kid said, we had. He goes, well, how many points did Larry Bird have? Well, cool, put that down where X is. And he starts helping the kid kind of just change his viewpoint on how to see an equation by using something the kid's really into. He met him where he was at. And all of a sudden, the kid understood algebra. Sometimes it's just a link, you just gotta find it. And I mean, that to me is like the perfect example. So, during the big sneaker culture stuff, it was probably about 8-9 years ago, a lot of companies would pull me aside and ask me what we should be doing, because they're freaking out because their bottom line is about to get pretty rough, right? I mean, time does what it does. And I told them, I said, why don't you find a way to go to a bunch of cool sneaker stores around the United States that these kids obsessively follow, and take a crew of master level craftsmen and do a cool build out on site while they're running like some sort of cool sale. So the kids are seeing people build cool stuff and they're associating with something they love. And they all just kind of looked at me like I was weird. Okay. Good luck. I'll tell them to get on TV and watch somebody work on trim carpentry that they associate with their grandmother's house. Let me know how that works out. That was how many years ago, and we're still talking about it. Now, we are doing some stuff that is good. There are foundations, there are organizations that I feel like have really stepped up and are making a genuine effort. Skills USA is a big one, and the other one, hold on, I've got it written down right here because I want to make sure that they are mentioned properly. Bear with me. The Skills USA is aimed at workforce development, and woodworking falls in that umbrella, and they are very active. I mean, I know people that work full-time from going around talking to youth. But also there's the Woodworking Career Alliance of North America, and what they're doing is they're actually creating a system where they're training people on machinery, and for each level you get to, like, if you're proficient using a table saw and a band, you get a check. If you're proficient on a bandsaw, check. If you're proficient at assembling raised panel doors, check. So that when people are looking for that skill set, it's in a database and they can get them jobs anywhere in the country. How many of y'all have ever heard of that? Okay, that's pretty good. I was not expecting even two. Cool. I think the big problem is not that it should be everybody. So we're doing some good stuff, but we have to go heavier in that direction. It has to be actionable, it has to be tangible, it has to be real. I think the best thing we can do is start getting some of these groups to kind of link up and get together on marketing plans that are unified and a little bigger. Because at this point, we are an entire generation removed from a positive outlook on working in manufacturing. And I'm generalizing, there are some people that is not the case. Please don't take me out of context. But if we're that far off, we have to get a little more histrionic about this. We need to get louder. So, yeah, this is going to be a quicker speech than I thought, sorry. I'm dumping plenty of info, aren't I? Yeah, I can do that. I'm fast here, and it overwhelms. Fast enough to get me in trouble. So, those are things that are happening that are good. I also know several machinery companies that are very active in trying to get high schools and vocational schools moving again, and they are offering and supplying machinery pretty much comped. I know Grizzly Industrial has been incredibly active in the last year and a half, working and having people that travel and are sent out to shops to help show shop teachers what they need to know if they're learning too, but also how to help dial in the equipment. I mean, they're putting something behind it, and I like that. They're putting their money where the mouth is. But I'm not stupid, everyone does benefit. If we get more younger people into the trades, machinery companies benefit, manufacturing benefits. So it's a good thing. Great, everybody wins. But we need more. It needs to get louder. And here's where, this is where I've got to really stick to my notes so I'm in trouble. We do have a little elephant in the room when it comes to reaching out. So, we have available to us one of the most useful tools in the history of marketing. And I want to say a few things in caution as to how we're going to be using it and how we've been using it. Yeah, elephant in the room, social media. This generation lives on their screens. And I don't mean that in a mean way, it just is. So fortunately, there are tons of woodworking things on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and I'm sure I'm missing some at this point. I'm a little older. There's tons of it. And I encourage you to go through and look at it and ask yourself, is it really giving them an honest reflection of what a career path looks like? Are we really showing them and celebrating some of the great things about woodworking? Or are we really just kind of enticing them with the performance of woodworking? And I say that because I am a craftsman. I've bled all over my floor. No problem, get right back up and keep going, right? I have a weird ritual with that one. Peroxide, Band-Aid, horse wrap, go back in. I am grateful that people are on social media doing stuff, whether I even like the video or not relevant. It is bringing people in, and that's fantastic. So I am nowhere suggesting that what is being done is wrong. What I am suggesting is the people who are sponsoring and who are actively guiding the direction of how that is being portrayed to take a better look at maybe presenting something with some more balance. Because I build for a living. My clients pay my bills. I work heavy hours. And I've built some pieces that have won awards. And the building of those pieces did not look eloquent. And they sure didn't look like a time lapse. You know? And we're setting some of these young guys and girls up when they come in. You know, a cool Instagram video is great. Can you do 8 hours of sanding? And then do you get to that whole experience of doing that 8 hours of sanding and getting that piece into form and the fulfilling part, right? Because we want them to stick it out. So one of the best things about this job and one of the most remarkable things about this job is even if you're working in a cabinet shop, there's still a level of pride in something that you were able to do. That you were active and you were involved in it, and there was a physical, tangible result. That's healthy pride. But it's fulfilling. There's soul in our work. And we're really not utilizing that. I've talked to the young people. I've worked with them. Their biggest complaint is most of the career options in front of them are kind of just soulless and unfulfilling. It's weird, because to me it's about the money. Not to them. And I can see why. One of the guys that worked for me, God, I've never seen a young guy take off faster. He was a natural. It was heartbreaking when he moved. Not to mention I lost a lot of training hours. I was a little upset. But I understood life on life's terms, right? Being angry about it's only going to just hamper my productivity today, so I know better. I'm getting old enough to be wiser. But he got it so fast. And then he had some life stuff come up and he moved. Well, there was no other woodworking opportunities where he moved. He's managing at Domino's, and he's making crazy money. When he told me what he was making for managing at Domino's, God. So it's not the money to him. He's 20 years old now. He doesn't have any kids. He's not married. It's just cash to him. But if there were an opportunity to work alongside of me, or someone like me in the place he moved to, he would have taken it. Domino's. It's a good job, no, you're knocking it, but man, you should have seen this kid run a bandsaw. Wasn't afraid at all. He squared that thing right up. Most people, they don't, because it's kind of standing right there squaring you up, in my experience. That's the one machine everyone's really kind of intimidated by, which is so strange. The joiner doesn't scare them. But I'm just encouraging us to start looking at it, because the craft that I love is built with calluses. It's built with a little bit of grit. I'm self-employed. There have absolutely been moments where I didn't want to keep going that night, but the deadline was due, and keeping my word to my client mattered. How bad do you want it? Can you imagine what it would look like? George Nakashima, Mount Rushmore woodworking. Can you imagine if his body of work was half the size because he was really busy and he was concerned about how many likes he was getting? Maybe this piece isn't any good, people didn't like it. That's a real thing. There are budding George Nakashimas out there. Can you imagine him being like, I don't really want to build, I don't know, I'm really more concerned with my follower count. Like, come on, man. It doesn't mean those things don't matter. I want to encourage balance. The example I've told many companies is Michael Jordan, right? It's kind of like Albert Einstein. I've never met a person that told me Albert Einstein wasn't smart. I think he's kind of universally accepted as being smart. Was. Michael Jordan, pretty good basketball player. I wanted to wear Michael Jordans because I watched him win in those things, not because he was in a commercial telling me that Jordans were cool. It's because he was winning. That's what got me. Marketing doesn't always win people over. It's not always what inspires us. It doesn't inspire me. You know what inspires me? People. The thought that if I keep going hard, in 20 years from now, I might be a tenth of as good as Sam Malouf is why I keep getting in there and doing it. Besides the fact that it pays bills. But that's what inspires me. Being cool, I've been there. It wears off. So I just encourage everybody to we need some balance. I do love what's happening because it's getting eyes on it. And we need eyes. We need kids seeing that it exists. But once we get them, I just encourage us to have a good, honest dialogue with ourselves about what we are financially supporting, contributing to, and mostly what we could be doing differently or adding to it. How many of y'all have ChatGPT? I've recently gotten involved in that thing. It's pretty wild. So for the sake of this discussion, I went on last night and I asked ChatGPT I was like, who are some famous woodworkers? It said Sam Malouf, George Nakashima, and then two guys with YouTube accounts, which they might be good, I don't know. Never was the name Jory Brigham mentioned. In my opinion, he's the Sam Malouf of my peers. I don't even know the guy. I get nothing for saying this. He might not even like me. I don't know. But he's that good. He's one of the best of my generation. And ChatGPT accessed the entire internet. That concerned me because, and I can prove it. Go look at the awards here. There are two pieces I saw in there that are. There's a chair that is very Malouf inspired. So we know what that man was doing is still inspiring people today. And all of those contestants were our target. Sorry, I thought the screen was still our target audience. And another piece in there was actually a almost inch by inch replica of a Jory Brigham. And ChatGPT didn't even pick that up. So that's why I'm saying this. I don't care if my name's there. We're already, I mean, can we just be honest? The talent level, or skill level, or mastery level between just about anybody I can see or find, including myself, and Sam Malouf is about as wide as the Pacific. And I'm not romanticizing the past here. The guy was amazing and cool. If you ever meet anybody that met that gentleman, ask for stories. It was cool. So that's what I'm wanting to look at is, can we also focus on showing the young people what professionals who are making an actual profit, manufacturing a product, visible, and selling it looks like. They need that viewpoint too. If not, we're kind of setting them up for failure because we're selling them a performance that isn't always the most accurate. Still great advertising, love it. So I think everyone needs to keep doing what they're doing. It's not a negative, it's just balance. So those are the big points I really wanted to get at today. But the biggest one is we have to find a way to meet them where they're at. We have to find things that inspire them, that they find fulfilling. And when we get a chance, one wants to talk to us, instead of telling them everything they need to know, which I'm guilty myself, just need to listen. The older I get, the more I realize how powerful it is just to be approachable, instead of the guy with all the answers. Unfortunately, today I have to have some answers because they asked me to have some. But I feel like I've covered the blanket of what I wanted to say, but the main ideas here are we have to find a way to connect to these people. We need to understand that there's a stigma associated with failure and how we can change and give them a new perspective. And then I think we need to look at the actual things we are doing that are working and look at some of the things we're doing that might need a little adjustment or some new additions. And it's going to need funding, plain and simple, right? If I said nothing, you'd be sitting there going, well, it's about the money. Of course it's about the money. How else do you run ads? Anyway, I'd like to open it up just for some Q&A, if you'd like. I have a microphone, or if you just want to holler it out, then I'll just repeat your question in here. Whatever you're comfortable with, I don't mind. As long as you want to interact, it's fine with me. If you don't want to, don't. Yeah.
I'm curious, the people you apprentice, or your apprentices, are they, what are they talking about? You mentioned listening to a lot of the things that they're, 10,000 hours and they're talking. What's a trend, or what are they?
Like life stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the question was, the several apprentices and helpers I've had that were younger, what were they talking about? Some of it I can't really say because we're being recorded. That's real life, man. At the time, my first guy, sneaker culture and hip hop was a huge thing, you know, and I mean, I like some hip hop, but I'm not getting into my musical preferences, but I will say I was a lot more open to him being in charge of the stereo. You know, I break that up. I can tell you what, man, stereo is yours for today. Blast whatever you want, and we blast it loud. Just anything that allowed him to feel like he mattered. But as far as cool hype stuff, that was the big one, was just vintage clothing and sneakers, but a lot of it too is just, where am I supposed to go? You know, when serious talk was up, it was really just about, I want a path, and I don't like all these paths that are being dangled in front of me. This feels good, and that was a lot of what was happening. The other guys, it's usually music or something in the culture of you know, they're young, right? Well, when you were young, you know, what were you into? You know, for me it was, well, you don't want to know what I was doing at 19, but you know, yeah, what makes me cool, right? But also, where am I going? And that was the bulk of the conversations, in music, lots of music, and how to talk to girls. Most of the guys, they're always asking about that. And I'd always told them, I don't know. But that's really, as far as the work is concerned, they're just curious. I mean, and to me, that's one of the most defining characteristics of a successful tradesman or craftsman: curiosity. You know, I always tell people woodworking is jazz. There's more scales out there than I could possibly master, and that's the coolest part. You know, as soon as I think I've really gotten good and done something amazing, sometimes I have, I can only really get cocky about it for 2 or 3 days, because something else is going to come to mind that's even more challenging, and I'm going to do that, right? Thank God Michael Jordan wasn't happy with just dunking, right? He's like, hey, I'm going to get a mid-range game too, right? To me, that's what excellence is. Not, I built a certain table, a certain style everyone's buying right now, and I'm good. And I think you're going to see that the next year and a half. A lot of young guys got in it that way. They didn't diversify their skill set, and the market trend is changing design-wise, and they're going to be sitting there not knowing how to build the next thing. They just built one thing well. Great for short-term gains. But that's the mistake I see with youth a lot. They don't realize this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. I think I answered the question. Anybody else? I love questions, they're fun. Nothing? I've got time, I can stand up here and be very awkward. Okay? Well, I appreciate your ears and your tolerance, because I'm sure I said something that made you go. But everything I've experienced is what I've experienced. And unfortunately, at this point, I have to say I probably do have a remotely decent viewpoint of it because I've kind of been in it. Or where I live, I've seen the effects. So, it's relevant, and I just want to thank you for your time today.